Hi, we're back for part B of the video lecture. This is going to be over chapter 12 on children's social emotional growth and mental health. Sorry, I am fighting a little bit of a cold, so I hope I don't have another coughing fit. I've tried to record this 3 times, so bear with me if I do. I'm going to try to finish it up this time. When we talk about children's social emotional growth, we say that the evidence of this is that they can manage and control their emotions and their behaviors, and that is a sign of mental wellness with children. Some things that influence a child that determines whether they have good mental health or poor mental health is whether they have any biological predispositions to mental health disorders. Genetically, they can inherit a tendency towards attention deficit disorder. They can inherit a tendency towards schizophrenia. So there could be some biological causes for a mental health issue. Also, the child's temperament. If you've had ECD 110, you've learned in basic child development that children have different temperaments. You can have a child that is very slow to warm up. It takes them a while to make a commitment to a social interaction, and they tend to be a little more shy. Or you can have a child that just rushes right in. They show a lot of initiative, and that's a difference in their temperament, and that can be a determining factor in their success socially and whether they develop correctly socially and mentally. Their nutrition can impact that, as can any kind of physical abnormalities that they might be born with, or things that happen to them physically after birth, and then also their brain development. All of these things are the biological impacts of social emotional development and mental health. There are some environmental ones as well, and that would be their family and how that family interacts with them. Beyond heredity, the social interactions in their home, whether their home is safe and secure and a loving place, and likewise their community. If their community is safe, or is it a very dangerous place to be? If they're living in threat of bodily harm and danger, if they're living in poverty and food insecurity, then it is going to have a negative impact on their social well-being and their mental growth. Another item that can come to play is if they are exposed to toxins, and this can be through secondhand smoke, it can be through agricultural waste or environmental waste from manufacturing, it can be in the air or the water that they drink or the food that they eat. So toxins can play an important role in brain development and their mental capabilities. Another thing is their social and emotional growth and their interactions. Are they able to form relationships that allow them to grow socially and emotionally? Their bonding and their interaction with someone, whether it be a parent or a main caregiver, that allows them to begin social learning. And we're going to talk now about the different ages and stages by age. That very first thing, and we talk about the importance of bonding with infants. Bonding and that interaction between a caregiver and a baby is the very beginning steps of social interaction, emotional development, and subsequently their mental health. So babies, when they start a social smile, that is their first outward expression of communicating with someone, any kind of social emotional development. We talk about the dance between a caregiver and an infant. If you've bottle fed a baby or nursed a baby, the expressions, making expressions with the baby, talking to them, and them watching your eyes and watching the expression on your face, that is adding to not just their communication skills, which it does, but it's adding to their social emotional competency and letting them learn about social and emotional interchange between people and building that bond. They also begin in the infant stage to respond to the emotions of others. If someone is upset, they may become upset alongside with them, not even understanding the situation. From age 1 to 2, they do a lot more imitation. They're still watching your face, and they're repeating things that you do, but they're watching for how you form words, and they're watching for emotions. They may not recognize facial expressions as emotions always, but they're beginning to watch that and imitate that and learn that. They begin to learn that their self is separated from others, and they're really excited to be around other children. They may not play purposefully with them. They play next to them or near them. We call it parallel play. But they're excited to be with other kids. And they may want to touch their face or they want to go over to them. And they begin to develop independence. And defiance at that age is normal. Drives us crazy sometimes. And 2-year-olds' favorite word may be no. But that is a very important stage, that they are saying, I am now separate from my parent, my caregiver, I have my own identity, and they start to develop that. They may also show separation anxiety. At this stage, it's normal. It's not necessarily a sign of any kind of social emotional distress or mental illness, but most children go through a brief period at 18 months or so excuse me, of separation anxiety. Allergies. From 2 to 3, they begin to show individuality. They start to develop memory. They're developing language skills, so they have some, they're storing up some memories of things and starting to categorize and understand their world. If you studied Piaget in other psychology or early childhood education classes, he called this developing their schemas, making sense of the world, starting to construct their understanding of the world and organize it. That begins to happen at this stage. They also begin to make friends from 2 to 3. They're very transient friendships sometimes, not maybe lifelong friendships. Although my son made his best friend, who's still his best friend at 24 when he was 2. It started with him pushing him down, but that's normal for a 2-year-old. They develop the beginnings of a conscience. They start to see that others' feelings are important, and they feel a little bit of what others are feeling, or they start to realize that their actions harm or make someone happy. From 3 to 4, they begin to really interact socially. This is when more friendships form. They start to play more purposefully with each other and make up little games and do things, playing puppies and kitties and that sort of thing. The Home Living Center or the Dramatic Play Center is a very important area for them at this time because they're really experimenting with those social interactions. They want to please their teacher and follow rules. They really love their teacher. It's teacher, look at this. Teacher, listen to this. Teacher, read me the story. Teacher, look at my artwork. And while you have that kind of respect and love from them, it's a great time to build that bond and really help them learn to operate within appropriate boundaries and expectations, because they love the rules. They're very literal. They're very rule bound. And as they progress on into the 4 to 5 year, they start to show leadership. They need to be allowed to show initiative when it's safe to do so and appropriate, and be successful at that and not be cut down for showing initiative, even if their initiative leads them to making some kind of social or behavioral mistake. Awarding the initiative without allowing for a negative behavior is fine. You can teach them, hey, I'm glad you jumped out there and tried that. Unfortunately, it broke this toy and we're going to have to fix that. You don't have to shame them into it, but you can show them that they can take what they've learned and move forward through it. They start to see others' points of view. They need choices. They need choices to be able to make mistakes, to be allowed to navigate the waters of trying again and again and fixing things and learning from their mistakes, to build that knowledge base of, hey, I tried it this way, it didn't work, but that's okay. I tried it this way, it didn't work, but that's okay. I tried it one more time, I was persistent, and look, I've done it. From 5 to 8, they're more independent, and they start to judge themselves based on what they think others see. Their peer reports back to them are very important, whether they're liked or not, whether they're well received, whether they have good social interactions begins to really impact their view of themselves. So it's very important at that time to watch for bullying, because that often occurs, to watch for self-esteem and make sure that's being built in a positive and productive way, and to make sure that they're treating others the way they want to be treated. They'll also start from 5 to 8 to focus on skills. You'll see them develop hobbies, wanting to play sports, focusing on something that they practice over and over and over and over again. There's lots of puzzle building, there's lots of crafts, things that they want to develop mastery in, and that's very important for them to do. It's appropriate for their age, and being successful in that builds their positive self-image, which allows them to be more mentally healthy. So we want to create this supportive environment with caring relationships that allows them to navigate this. One of the key things that we can do that is really beneficial is to allow for large periods of time in learning centers and creative play, some open-ended social play, unstructured play on the playground for them to have time to develop these social skills. It's very important for them to experiment and to practice in an atmosphere that is very forgiving and allowing them to make mistakes. So what we can do to plan this environment is to plan for it. We can set it up. We can make sure that there is plenty of chances for them to do the skills that they want to practice, make sure that they have time, make sure the schedule is not too rushed, and have those caring relationships where they're respected, they're responded to, and their expectations and boundaries are clear and fair and set up and well known. They're not going to get in trouble when they didn't even know they shouldn't be doing something. The unstructured play, it builds their social development, and then developing a foundation for social success and school success. There is a Skills for School Success list on page 399 that you'll want to look at. And beyond that, it goes into some positive approaches to learning. Some positive things that you can do in the classroom is allow for that curiosity and openness. We want them to be a lifelong learner. We want them to experiment, collaborate, test things, hypothesize, build those higher order thinking skills that are so important for them. And then when they're successful in this, it builds resiliency, it builds their social skills, they have positive social interactions, they have reinforcement from friends, they have the support of their teachers, and that helps build their mental capacities, helps lessen the impact of potential mental illness, and helps them learn how to work around some of those challenges that they may have. We also want to give them time in this positive approach to learning to reflect and interpret what they're doing. They need to examine their activities and think about them and reflect on them and return to them again and again and interpret what they think is successful and not so they know when to try again. This will build persistence. It'll allow them to be imaginative and creative and come up with positive solutions and to problem solve. We want them to have cognitive problem solving skills. It's great to get all the right answers on a question, on a test, but it's even better to take all of the knowledge they're learning in school and from their peers and be able to apply that to life and be successful. The purpose of school is not just to get an A. The purpose is to learn how to live. So if we're allowing them higher order thinking skills and problem solving, we're giving them information, but then they can apply that information in a way that helps them succeed in life. From 9 to 14% of children before the age of 6 will experience some kind of emotional or behavioral problem. So 9 to 14% out of the total population of children have some kind of behavioral emotional challenge. The number of those children in that 9 to 14% that are from poverty, it greatly outweighs children not in poverty. So children in poverty have a much greater risk of having mental health issues. And when they have mental health issues, 70 to 80% of them receive no care whatsoever. There's no mental health services sought out for those children. So if 14% of the population has emotional problems, and most of those are in poverty homes, and most of those in poverty homes don't receive mental health care, then we are going to have children in our elementary schools and high schools with severe mental health issues that have not been addressed. Even mild mental health issues that have not been addressed. And when they're in our schools and in our preschools, their focus is on surviving. It may be on creating chaos if that's what they're comfortable with. It may be that they don't know how to function beyond the challenges that they have, and that leads to lower academic achievement. As a director, I always got the child that wasn't functioning well in the classroom, and they would come down to my office. Well, while they're in their office, even though that could be a positive experience, I would help them calm down, help them think through what happened, help them make a plan to go back and be successful. I would be very accepting of them, and we built a good positive relationship, and they knew they had a resource in me that was supportive of them. They were still missing out on what was happening in the class. If they were throwing all the paint and they didn't get to paint, they didn't get to paint. If they were tearing the books, they weren't getting read to or being read the books at that time, or being able to flip through the books themselves. If they were throwing blocks at their friend, then they weren't getting the experience of building with the blocks. So any child with persistent behavior issues is going to be more likely to be out of the room and not involved in the learning that's happening in the class. If it's a center that uses a lot of time out and they're spending a lot of time in timeout, they're not interacting with their peers. They're also being pulled out of a situation and set away from the action, not able to go in and fix it. Maybe it's explained to them what happened, maybe it's not explained to them. But those children need a chance to examine the situation, find out what happened, and figure out what they can do to go in and fix it and make it better. And they need to practice those skills until they're comfortable with those skills so they can be successful socially. Every child is going to have times where they're going to have a behavior issue in class. They might be tired or hungry. Maybe the smoke alarm went off and it woke them up and they couldn't get back to sleep. Or maybe they were overstimulated. There's too much going on and it's overwhelming and they have a meltdown. Or they didn't get enough food the night before and their stomach's growling and that's all they can think about. So any child can need to be redirected for behaviors that are causing a temporary disruption. But if these things are happening and they're inappropriate and they're frequent, if they're happening over and over again and the child is returning to those and being persistent in a behavior that's reaping negative results, if it's dangerous to themselves or others, then we look at this as a potential mental health issue. We want to know if we can manage that in our classroom, if there's a behavior plan we can create to make them successful, or is this a child that needs to be referred? Not maybe referred to be in care outside of our care, but referred to special services. Are they utilizing parents as teachers? Have they had developmental screenings? Is there a therapist or someone that could join with them to make them more successful? How do we get those conversations started with parents? Is it even our place to do that? You may be an associate teacher and it's not within your pay grade to make a diagnosis. You've not been trained to do that. So how do you on that team then support that child? What is your role in that? All of us can be observant. All of us can make sure we specifically watch to see if the frequency of a behavior is as we thought it was. Maybe it seems extreme because they bit and they really hurt someone and we're on guard for that all the time and we're worried that this child's a biter, but it's really not happening with frequency. So we can watch for the frequency of the behavior. Is it getting better or is it getting worse? Can they play without tremendous teacher support? If you leave their side, are they immediately going to take somebody's block and hit them with it? Are they going to become aggressive or whiny or not show initiative or back away if we're not there with them? Can we leave them and watch them be successful without us there to coach and guide them? Then we're going to look and see if their positive behaviors are increasing or decreasing. Are we seeing evidence of growth? So knowing that children are increasingly diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, it's very likely that you will have a child with that at some point in your career, especially if you work in the public school sector. We are seeing an increase in anxiety disorders through separation. If separation anxiety lasts into young childhood, past the 18-month stage, if they're social phobic, if we're seeing OCD or post-traumatic stress disorders or signs of that, those are anxiety disorders that we might see in children. We also might see mood disorders such as bipolar or depression. We're seeing depression in much younger children than we used to, and being able to recognize the signs of that. And if we do see strong signs of that, then we need to know how and when we can make referrals. And that may be up to the rules and the policies for your center. But all of us can work to build promotion strategies in the classroom. These are talked about on 409 to 411 in your book. And it talks about how to Use promotion strategies so a child can build self-regulation. Promotion strategy is just a term that means those techniques that we use in the classroom management things that make a child able to be successful socially and emotionally. We want a child to build resiliency, and that's what I'm going to end the lecture with. We can train our staff to recognize disorders and make referrals, but we want to build resiliency in all children. If we're building resiliency in a child, that child can return to ground zero. They can go back to a status quo and have their behavior under control after a moment of upset or after a time of crisis or emergency. If they're injured and they stay upset about it for months, there's a problem. If they're injured and they realize it was an accident and we patch them up and we make them feel better and they go back to playing, then they're resilient. So we want a child to be resilient, to be able to return back to a sense of control and empowerment after any kind of confusion. We want them to live in this state of resiliency so they bounce back, so that when they're bullied, they don't believe what their peers are saying about them, so that they don't think that they're a bad person because someone else sees them as bad, so they don't develop a tendency to become a victim. Resilient kids are less likely to be picked on by a bully, a pedophile, or a child abuser, because that person will move on to a more likely, easier target. So a resilient child has some self-protective factors. There's also a piece of information in the community through community partnership that you can get that talks about those protective factors, 40 building blocks for success. And you can get those to hand out to parents. You can get them to use as staff training. The concept of resiliency will be explored again when we get to that chapter on child abuse, and we'll talk about it a little bit more there in chapter 16. But I want you to look at it now. It's going to be part of your assignment for the week, and I'm going to assign some materials from Becky Bailey. You may be familiar with the I Love You rituals or conscious discipline. Becky Bailey talks about brain formation and children who live with stress and cortisol. She talks about what part of the brain they're using and how we can choose as teachers to discipline in a way that shows that we're conscious of what the child is feeling and thinking, what their motivations are, what the need is for that child at that time. And we can discipline in a way that guides them rather than punishes them and leads them to make better decisions in the future and leads them to be able to govern their own behavior. So we're going to explore that and the other resources I mentioned just a moment ago to do our unit assignment for this week, our lesson assignment for this week. So I'm going to release you to that now. I realize that this is a 22 plus minute video. Thank you for being patient and watching it. I hope you can hear me. This is not the best speaker and microphone system on this computer, so I hope you're able to understand me. If you have questions, as always, put it on Ask the Class or email me. My computer connection without the storms running through the area constantly is much stronger today and much better, so I should be able to get back with you more quickly. I apologize for my struggles to get online last week. I just could not access my router, kept having to be reset. So if you have additional questions, please feel free to contact me through email or ask your peers and Ask the Class. Good luck, and I hope you really enjoy this chapter. This is an area I'm very passionate about. I did an undergrad degree in psychology and sociology, so this is something that is very important to me. Having been a director and having all those so-called problem behaviors come to my door, and me being the one to walk the children through that, I really see the value in building those strong relationships and that secure environment in our preschools and daycares so that these children that come to us with challenges or have negative backgrounds or are smaller or quieter or shyer and get picked on by their peers have a strong foundation to build on so that they can become resilient children. So good luck, and I will look forward to seeing your work on this unit. Have a great night.